HOA Karen spat on my disabled son. She didn't know my wife was a Navy SEAL. Part 1. There are moments that freeze time, not because of beauty or joy, but because of horror, because something so ugly, so unexpected, shatters your sense of what's possible in a place you thought was safe. For me, it happened on a Wednesday afternoon, just outside our driveway, when a woman who called herself the head of neighborhood cleanliness enforcement leaned over, looked my 9-year-old son in his wheelchair, and spat on him. I didn't even register the sound first, just the look on Caleb's face. Shock, hurt, shame. His hand twitched toward the joystick of his power chair, trying to back away, but he froze. "Karen," I said, my voice hoarse. "What did you just do?" She scoffed. "I warned you. I told you he couldn't be here, leaving trash under the mailboxes. You ignored me. You people always do." I blinked. Trash. She pointed at a paper pinwheel Caleb had made and taped to the HOA signpost to honor Veterans Week. It had a red, white, and blue swirl and the words, "For my mommy," written in crayon. "That's artwork," I snapped. "It's a school project." Karen rolled her eyes. "Graffiti with glue?" I've asked nicely. Now I enforce. And then she spat again, right next to his tire. I dropped to my knees next to Caleb, who was shaking now, eyes wide, breathing shallow. It was too much. He'd already had to deal with stares, whispers, bullies who mimicked his limp or snickered at his ventilator attachment. But this was targeted hate. I felt something burn in my throat. Rage, shame, helplessness all crashing together. "Go inside," I told Caleb gently, unlocking his brakes. "Just go." "Okay." He nodded, wheeling himself slowly back toward the garage. Karen started to speak again, but then she stopped, because the sound of tires on gravel interrupted her. And when she turned, my wife stepped out of the truck. My wife, Taylor, was in plainclothes cargo pants, sunglasses, boots dusty from a training facility she'd just returned from. But nothing about her said civilian. You could see it in her posture, the way she scanned, assessed, locked in. Karen froze. Taylor pulled off her sunglasses. Her eyes locked onto me, then to Caleb, then down to the spit stain on his shirt. Her voice was ice. "Did she touch him?" "No." I said. "Worse." Karen folded her arms, trying to recover control. "I don't know who you think you are." "You don't?" Taylor interrupted. She stepped forward, slow, steady. She unzipped her jacket, pulled her Navy SEAL ID from around her neck. "I'm Chief Petty Officer Taylor Monroe Ellis, United States Navy SEAL Team 8. And you just assaulted my son." Karen stepped back, eyes wide. "I didn't touch. Spitting on a disabled minor is battery in this state," Taylor said. "And your HOA doesn't override federal law. That badge you printed, fraudulent impersonation?" Karen glanced at the fake badge clipped to her vest. "Neighborhood Enforcement Authorized HOA Monitor. Probably bought off Etsy." "You're lying. You can't." Taylor raised her voice. "You will stand where you are. You will not move. You will not speak again unless it's to law enforcement." Karen backed up, but she made one mistake. She raised her hand, and in one smooth, blur-fast motion, Taylor had her arm twisted behind her, her fake badge snapped from her vest, and her knees buckled on the sidewalk. Karen screamed. Neighbors stepped out of their houses. Phones came out. Cameras clicked. Taylor, still holding her firm, said calmly, "Call 911. Request immediate response for assault on a minor in impersonation of a federal officer." I dialed with shaking fingers, and within 5 minutes, Karen was in cuffs. Not because my wife was angry, but because she knew exactly how justice works. Caleb watched from the window as officers read Karen her rights. Taylor walked up the porch steps and opened the door. "Hey, buddy," she said gently. Caleb was crying now, quietly, cheeks red. She knelt beside him. "You didn't do anything wrong," she whispered. "You stood your ground." He shook his head. She said, "I don't belong here." Taylor took his hand. "She's wrong, and she's not in charge anymore." The news broke before dinner. Karen, a self-proclaimed HOA enforcement agent, arrested for battery and impersonation. Photos of the scene went viral. One shot showed Taylor with a hand on Caleb's shoulder. Karen in cuffs in the background. The caption, "Navy SEAL confronts HOA tyrant for spitting on her disabled son." That night, Taylor couldn't sleep. Neither could I. She paced the living room while I checked in with Caleb, who'd insisted on sleeping in his chair beside our bed. "I want to make sure he knows he's safe," he whispered. "I know," I said. "Me too." Taylor stood by the window, arms folded. "We're not done." "What do you mean this wasn't just Karen? She thought she could do it because someone let her. That board, those bylaws, they gave her cover. I'm going after all of it." I nodded. "I'll help." The next morning, Taylor filed formal complaints with the state HOA commission, the ADA legal watchdog group, and the local sheriff's department. Then she called Ava Morales, not just a civil rights attorney, the civil rights attorney in the region. They'd served in ROTC together. Ava listened, asked questions. Then she said, "I'm coming over, and I'm bringing media." That afternoon, Ava stood in our front yard beside Taylor, surrounded by reporters. And she said this child was assaulted for existing while disabled. This mother was forced to protect him with military-level restraint. And this HOA will answer for the system that allowed it. Taylor took the mic next. "We serve this country so kids like Caleb could live with dignity. But if that dignity is being stripped by neighborhood tyrants in khakis and fake badges, then I'm not done fighting." That clip aired on every major station. The internet caught fire. Support poured in from across the country, but so did stories. Hundreds of messages. Karen told my autistic son he couldn't play in front of the HOA gym. My daughter's wheelchair was called a tripping hazard. We were fined for leaving medical tubing visible from the yard. The discrimination wasn't new. We were just the match that lit the whole thing up, and we weren't going to let it die down. Absolutely. Here's part 2 of the story. Part 2. You'd think after being handcuffed on her own street, spit-stained reputation dragging behind her, Karen would disappear into silence. She didn't. 3 days after the arrest, while our son Caleb was still processing what had happened, while Taylor was building a legal case with Ava Morales, and while news vans were still parked outside our street, Karen filed a complaint against us. She claimed excessive force, claimed harassment, claimed the incident had been exaggerated by media manipulation. She called herself the victim of anti-patriot propaganda. That was the last straw, and the spark for Operation Break the Gate. Taylor had already started digging. Her SEAL instincts never really turned off, even after her honorable discharge 3 years ago. While I stayed home with Caleb, she and Ava worked from the garage, the kitchen, even the front porch. They laid out folders, scanned through PDFs, took statements from neighbors. The more they pulled, the uglier it got. Karen's so-called HOA Enforcement Authority, total fiction. But the Summer Pines Homeowners Council, what she claimed gave her power, was real, buried in decades-old paperwork and shady renewals. The council hadn't been legally active since 2007. But that didn't stop a small, hand-picked group from acting like it was. They'd been printing fake citations, collecting dues that weren't required, and even threatening non-compliant neighbors with false lawsuits. Most of it happened quietly through intimidating letters, social pressure, and the pretense of authority. But when Taylor and Ava looked deeper, they found something worse. The pattern. Most of the enforcement targeted families of color. Most of the warnings went to parents of kids with disabilities. Most of the random inspections happened outside homes with visible mobility ramps, parked medical vans, or alternative education signage. They weren't enforcing cleanliness. They were targeting vulnerability, and they did it because no one thought to fight back. Until now, Taylor and Ava created a strategy. Phase 1, expose. They compiled every fake citation, every threatening letter, and every anonymous complaint tied to Karen or the ghost HOA. They requested public records, interviewed residents, and got 4 families to sign affidavits detailing harassment, Phase 2 pressure. They launched a neighborhood-wide campaign. We printed flyers, set up a website, called it Break the Gate. We published every forged policy the fake HOA ever printed, every misuse of ADA guidelines, every dollar improperly collected. The response, massive. Dozens of residents came forward. A retired vet named Mr. Jameson said Karen once reported him for displaying unauthorized military memorabilia, a folded flag in his window. A young mom said her autistic daughter's therapy swing had been labeled visual clutter and removed without notice. We posted it all, with receipts. Phase 3 reclaim. Taylor stood in front of a town hall crowd in her SEAL insignia shirt and spoke calmly, clearly. We didn't come here to ask for permission. We came to end the illusion. You don't get to hurt our children and hide behind clipboards. You don't get to spit and pretend you stand for order. Today, this HOA dies, and tomorrow, a real community takes its place. Applause broke out. Even some former board members stood. The next day, Ava filed a civil injunction. It officially dissolved the Summer Pines HOA Council due to fraud and community misconduct. Karen's complaint against us dismissed, and her name now permanently attached to a civil lawsuit filed by 7 families, including ours. Caleb watched it all unfold from home. He didn't say much, but one night, as Taylor tucked him into bed, he asked, "Mom, are we safe now?" She kissed his forehead. "We are," she said, "because now everyone sees." The media kept circling. They wanted interviews, profiles, photos of Caleb. We declined most. This wasn't about headlines. This was about healing. Still, one image leaked. Taylor standing on our porch, hand on Caleb's shoulder, Ava beside them. A new sign above the door. No fake power here. It went viral. The real shift came weeks later, at the emergency neighborhood vote. A new council elected publicly, fairly, with full transparency, replaced the old structure. No more shadow rules. No more fake titles. The new bylaws protected disability rights access to all communal spaces, explicit banning of any HOA clause that violates federal civil rights or ADA compliance, mandatory review by independent legal counsel annually, immediate removal of any volunteer enforcer attempting to use unverified authority, and on page 1, this community is built on respect for every family, every child, every chair, every scar. Karen disappeared. Rumor had it she tried to start a compliance group in another town. Didn't get far, because we made sure her name followed her. Not out of vengeance, but so she'd never have power in the shadows again. Taylor, meanwhile, got an invitation. The state governor's office had heard about Break the Gate. They asked her to advise on HOA oversight legislation. And she said yes. With one condition: we do this for every disabled child who's been spat on silently. At home, Caleb started smiling again. Not just small ones. Big, wide, glowing grins. He helped us paint the new mailbox. Added his own stencil, a tiny seal trident with a wheelchair spinning through it. "Your idea?" I asked. He nodded. "It's what we are now." And he was right. We weren't the quiet family on the corner anymore. We were the ones who broke the gate. Part 3. Some battles stay on your street. Others rise up and change everything. What happened to our son, Caleb, wasn't just about a spit-stained shirt or a fake badge. It was about how a quiet corner ours became the center of a storm that swept across the county, the state, and slowly, the nation. Because once the truth was out, there was no going back. Not for us, not for them, not for anyone hiding behind fake rules again. Taylor took on her new role as advisor to the governor's HOA Oversight Task Force with the same energy she once brought to breaching enemy doors. She didn't posture, she didn't bluff, she brought facts. Ava helped draft the SEAL Act, named after Taylor's rank, but also standing for safeguarding every American's living rights. The act proposed mandatory AD awareness training for all HOA board members, criminal penalties for impersonating regulatory authority in residential spaces, establishing a dignity compliance office to audit HOAs for bias-based enforcement, Protections for disabled veterans, children, and family caregivers in housing zones. Taylor testified before the State Assembly. She shared Caleb's story calmly, clearly, without emotion clouding the facts. My son was targeted not because he was unruly, or unclean, or out of line. He was targeted because he was visible, because he couldn't hide the thing that made him different, and someone thought that gave her permission to hurt him. Then she held up a photo, the pinwheel he'd made, the one Karen called trash. The room went silent. And a week later, the SEAL Act passed unanimously in committee. Back home, we saw the ripple. Parents from all over wrote us letters, handwritten, typed. Some emailed scanned copies of HOA citations they were afraid to fight. A dad from Nevada wrote my daughter's oxygen tank was labeled an eyesore by our HOA. I didn't know I could fight it. Now I do. A mom in Kansas said they tried to fine us for wheelchair marks on the sidewalk. Your story gave me the courage to push back. The community was waking up, and Taylor wasn't just part of the movement. She was leading it. Meanwhile, Caleb found his own way to fight. It started when his fourth-grade teacher asked him to write about what makes you strong. He came home frustrated. I'm not strong like Mom. I can't do push-ups or run. Taylor knelt beside him. Do you know what real strength is? He looked up. She placed her hand on his chest. It's here. It's choosing to roll back out onto that sidewalk even after what happened. That's stronger than anything I did overseas. That night, he wrote my chair is my legs, but my words are my power. My chair rolls, but I rise with every word I say. The next day, his teacher read it aloud, then asked if he wanted to perform it at the district's Youth Expression Showcase. He said yes. We helped him prepare. He practiced in the living room, then at school, then finally on stage under bright lights. Hundreds of eyes and no fear. He rolled up, cleared his throat, and said she spat on me. And for a while, I thought that meant I didn't belong. But then I remembered something my mom said. Your wheels don't make you small. They make you unstoppable. When he finished, the room rose to its feet. No one sat. 2 weeks later, Caleb's words became part of a new curriculum. The district adopted a pilot module on empathy and community respect, using his speech as the centerpiece. They called it Voices on Wheels. And it wasn't just for disabled students. It was for everyone who'd ever been pushed to the curb. Karen's name, meanwhile, came up again this time in a new civil case. 3 more families filed suit against her for previous acts of intimidation, some dating back 5 years. Taylor and Ava helped them gather evidence, provided statements, offered support. Karen was fined, barred from participating in HOA activity in the state for 10 years. A permanent civil rights injunction followed. She moved again. This time, no one followed her, but her story followed every HOA in the state. They were all on notice now. Our street changed too. Where once silence reigned, celebration grew. The old compliance notice board outside the clubhouse replaced with a mural painted by kids. It showed a golden wheelchair, wheels spinning into stars, a Navy trident in the sky, and a big, bold phrase, "We roll forward." Caleb's idea. That summer, we held the first HOA Free Community Day. No rules, no fines, just families. Barbecue smoke filled the street, lawn chairs lined the curbs, and Caleb, surrounded by other kids, some in chairs, some not, led the first parade down the block. Taylor marched beside him, a quiet smile on her face, the glint of her seal ring catching the light. Late that night, I asked Caleb, "Did you ever think we'd end up here?" He nodded. "I hoped," he said, "but now, I know." Part 4. The first time Caleb rolled past the old clubhouse after Karen's arrest, he held my hand tighter than usual. It had been 6 months. The police tape was long gone. So was the smug sign reading HOA Enforcement Zone. What stood there now was something different. Hope. Painted across the wall, done by a group of local high school artists and funded by community donations, was a sprawling mural of children of all abilities playing together. At the center, A boy in a wheelchair soared with eagle wings trailing behind him, and above him, in blocky, bold letters, "You can't gate human dignity." Caleb pointed at it. "That's me," he whispered. And I knew we'd arrived at the ending none of us had expected, but all of us had fought for. Since the SEAL Act passed, change had swept through our state like wildfire, but the healing happened slower, deeper. Taylor continued advising the governor's task force. Her input shaped not just policy, but the tone of enforcement language used in HOAs across the region. Words matter, she always said, because behind every infraction could be a child, a veteran, a caregiver, a person. And when laws forgot that, people got hurt. Caleb's story became a national feature, not a viral moment, but a long, thoughtful documentary titled Break the Gate. It chronicled the fake HOA, Karen's takedown, Taylor's legal activism, and most of all, Caleb's journey from silent victim to confident voice. The documentary premiered at a disability advocacy conference in Chicago. We flew out as a family. When the final credits rolled, the crowd stood. One woman, a teacher in a rural district, said through tears, "We didn't know how to speak up for our kids. Now we do." But that wasn't the only ripple. Inspired by the SEAL Act, 6 other states introduced mirror legislation. California passed the Access Act. New York launched the Housing Equity Watchdog Initiative. By year's end, Congress had begun debating a federal bill mandating ADA enforcement transparency in private residential governance. They called it the Caleb provision. Back home, life moved on, but it didn't move back. Taylor received a citation for her service, not just military, but civic. Ava became the lead legal coordinator for a new national HOA reform coalition. And Caleb, he started a podcast. With help from his school, he launched Rolling Truth, a monthly podcast where kids with disabilities interviewed advocates, authors, and lawmakers about inclusion, safety, and power. In the first episode, he said they tried to make me feel small. But I learned something. My chair doesn't limit me. It lifts me where the world can hear me. One afternoon in late spring, I caught Taylor standing in the driveway, eyes closed, arms folded. "What are you thinking about?" I asked. She opened her eyes. "I'm listening." To what she pointed to the street, kids playing, laughter, wheels spinning, sprinklers hissing, no shouting, no clipboards, no hate. She turned to me. We took our street back. We never saw Karen again. She never apologized, but her name became a warning. When families spoke about unfair treatment, they used a new phrase, "Don't let them pull a Karen on you." It wasn't mockery, it was caution and empowerment. The community officially retired the old HOA name. They voted to rename our zone Freedom Pines Neighborhood Collective. No board, just volunteers. No fines, just forums. No fake badges, just belonging. At the first community barbecue that summer, Caleb was asked to speak. He rolled up to the mic, wearing his Rolling Truth hoodie and a seal pin his mom had given him. He said, "I don't remember everything she said, but I remember how it made me feel. And I remember how many people showed up to prove her wrong. So now when I see a gate, I don't worry. I look for the people standing beside me, and I keep rolling forward." He raised his hand. Everyone clapped. Taylor was already crying beside me. Later that night, we sat on the porch again, like we always did. Caleb wheeled out, watching fireflies blink in the dark. "Dad, yeah. Bud, what if someone tries again? Somewhere else they will," I said. "But now, they'll have to go through people like us." He nodded, then smiled. "Good. Not all heroes wear uniforms. Some wear sneakers with mismatched socks. Some ride in chairs that creak. Some stand on porches with a coffee in hand and a resolve so strong the street bends to their will. And sometimes those heroes carry the scars of spit, shame, and silence. But they keep going because their truth rolls louder than any rule, because their worth can't be gated, and because justice doesn't knock. It kicks the gate off its hinges and builds something better in its place. The end.